The invitation arrived on the one night Claire Whitmore was still trying to believe her marriage could be saved. It was 6:17 on a Friday evening in late October, and the kitchen smelled like melted chocolate, vanilla frosting, and the kind of hope a woman keeps baking long after common sense tells her to stop. Claire stood barefoot on the hardwood floor, wearing the pale blue apron Daniel had bought her 10 years earlier at a little gift shop in Cape Cod, back when he still held her hand in parking lots and kissed her forehead for no reason. On the counter sat his birthday cake, 2 layers dark chocolate, extra ganache, no walnuts because Daniel hated walnuts with a seriousness that used to make her laugh. 18 years of marriage had taught her the tiny things. How he liked his coffee, which side of the bed he turned toward when he was worried, how he loosened his tie the second he walked through the front door, and lately how he lied without blinking. The doorbell rang just as Claire was smoothing frosting along the side of the cake. She paused, spatula in hand, listening. Daniel was not home. Of course he was not home. He had texted an hour earlier. Running late. Client dinner. Do not wait up. She had stared at those words for a long moment before placing her phone face down beside the cooling rack. Do not wait up. It had become the unofficial slogan of their marriage. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked to the front door. Outside, the porch light glowed over a small cream-colored envelope lying on the welcome mat. No delivery truck. No neighbor walking away. Just the envelope, clean and elegant, as if it had been placed there by mistake or by fate. Claire picked it up. The paper was thick, expensive, textured beneath her thumb. On the front, written in looping navy blue ink, were 6 words that made her smile for half a second before the smile vanished. For Daniel Whitmore and family. Family. Claire almost laughed, but it caught somewhere in her throat. Their house had been quiet for years. No children running down the hallway. No relatives gathering around the table unless Claire arranged everything herself. No warmth unless she manufactured it with candles, flowers, and meals Daniel often missed. She turned the envelope over. There was no return address, only a gold sticker shaped like a tiny balloon. Something about it felt wrong. Not dangerous. Not dramatic. Just wrong in the way a locked drawer feels wrong after years of pretending you do not notice it. She should have set it aside for Daniel. She should have waited. That was what a trusting wife would do. But Claire had spent too many nights being called sensitive, suspicious, dramatic, tired. She had spent too many mornings finding receipts in suit jackets from places Daniel had never mentioned. She slid one finger under the flap and opened it carefully. Inside was a birthday invitation printed on soft ivory cardstock. The letters blurred for a second before her eyes sharpened on the date. Tomorrow. 6 o'clock. Maple Grove Bistro, 43 miles away. Then she saw the line beneath it. Daddy Daniel, please come early. Lily wants you to light the candles like always. Claire stopped breathing. The kitchen clock ticked behind her. Once. Twice. 3 times. She turned the invitation over with hands that suddenly felt cold. On the back was a small photo, slightly faded from the printer, but clear enough to destroy a life. Daniel stood beside a woman Claire had never seen, his arm resting comfortably around her shoulders. A teenage boy leaned against him from one side, and a little girl with bright curls hugged his waist from the other. They were standing behind a birthday cake. Daniel was laughing, not smiling politely, not posing. Laughing with his whole face, the way he had not laughed in Claire's kitchen for years. She looked from the photo to the chocolate cake on her counter, the one she had made from scratch because some foolish part of her still believed effort could call love back home. The frosting knife slipped from her fingers and tapped softly against the floor. Claire did not scream. She did not cry. She did not tear the invitation in half. She simply stood there in the warm kitchen, surrounded by the smell of Daniel's favorite cake, while the life she thought she knew opened like a door she had never been allowed to see. Claire remained in the kitchen for several minutes, holding the invitation so tightly the corner bent beneath her thumb. The house around her looked exactly the same, and that made it worse. The brass lamp still glowed beside Daniel's leather reading chair. His gray overcoat still hung by the entryway, the one he wore on cold business trips to Chicago. Their wedding photo still stood on the console table. Claire in lace, Daniel in a black tuxedo, both of them smiling as if the future were something they had already agreed to protect. For years, She had built explanations around his absence the way someone stacks sandbags against rising water. He was busy. He was stressed. He was building something important. He needed space. He loved her in a quieter way now. At first, the business trips were occasional. 2 nights in Dallas. A weekend in Denver. A last-minute meeting in Boston. Then they became routine, folded neatly into their lives until Claire stopped asking too many questions because every question seemed to cost her a piece of peace. Daniel always had an answer ready. Flight delays. Client emergencies. Board dinners. Bad cell service. Once, when she found a receipt from a children's clothing store tucked inside his glove compartment, he had smiled without hesitation and said his assistant had borrowed the car to buy a gift for her nephew. When Claire noticed a pale pink hair tie looped around the gearshift, Daniel had sighed and rubbed his forehead as if she had disappointed him. "Claire, you are exhausted," he had said. "You are looking for problems because you feel lonely." That sentence had stayed with her longer than the hair tie. It made her feel small. It made her question the sharp little bell inside her chest that rang whenever something did not make sense. So she became careful. She stopped checking pockets. She stopped asking why his shirt sometimes smelled like unfamiliar detergent. She stopped mentioning the late calls he took in the garage with the door half closed. Instead, she learned the art of swallowing doubt with a smile. She became the kind of wife people praised at company dinners. Graceful. Patient. Supportive. The woman who remembered birthdays, sent sympathy cards, packed Daniel's suitcase before flights, and stood beside him in photographs while he accepted awards for integrity and leadership. The word integrity now seemed almost cruel. Claire set the invitation on the counter beside the cake and pressed both palms against the marble. The stone was cool. Solid. Real. She needed something real. Her eyes moved to the photo again. The other woman had honey blonde hair, a soft green dress, and one hand resting lightly on Daniel's chest in a gesture so familiar Claire felt it in her own bones. The boy in the picture looked about 16, tall and narrow-shouldered, with Daniel's chin. The little girl could not have been more than 8 or 9. Lily. The name from the card. Lily wants you to light the candles like always. Like always meant history. Like always meant rituals. Like always meant this was not new. Claire turned toward the refrigerator and saw the family calendar hanging under a magnet from Maine. Tomorrow was marked in her handwriting. Daniel home by 5, birthday dinner. She laughed once softly without humor. He had let her write it there. He had watched her plan the meal, choose the wine, order the candles, and he had still intended to drive 43 miles to another table where another cake waited for him. Her phone buzzed on the counter. For one wild second, she hoped it was Daniel confessing before she had to discover more. But the screen showed only his message. Long night. Might stay at the Westbrook Hotel downtown. Do not worry. Claire stared at the words until they no longer looked like language. Then she picked up the invitation, took one slow breath, and did something she had not done in years. She stopped explaining him away. Claire did not move right away. The phone screen dimmed, then went black, leaving only her faint reflection staring back at her from the glass. She looked older than she had that morning. Not because years had passed, but because one truth had finally stopped hiding. For a moment, she imagined calling Daniel. She imagined hearing his smooth voice, the little sigh he used whenever he wanted her to feel unreasonable. She imagined him saying there had been a misunderstanding, that the photo was from a charity event, that the children belonged to a client, that the woman was nobody. Nobody. Claire had spent years being asked to accept nobody as an answer. Not tonight. She carried the invitation to the small desk near the breakfast nook, where she kept stamps, spare keys, grocery coupons, and the quiet machinery of a life Daniel barely noticed. She opened her laptop and typed Maple Grove Bistro. The restaurant appeared instantly, a family-owned place with brick walls, checkered napkins, and a private party room in the back. 43 miles away. 48 minutes without traffic. Claire clicked through the photos on the website. Birthday banners. Round tables. A chalkboard menu. A wall covered in smiling families holding cakes. It looked warm, ordinary, harmless. That made her stomach tighten. Secrets did not always live in dark places. Sometimes they sat under string lights, beside lemonade pitchers and paper crowns. She typed the address into her phone and saved it, then reached for the invitation again. Her eyes found the name at the bottom in smaller print. Hosted by Vanessa Reed. Claire said it out loud once, barely above a whisper. Vanessa Reed. The name did not sound like a threat. It sounded like someone who volunteered at school fundraisers, bought seasonal wreaths, and knew exactly which bakery made the best buttercream frosting. Claire searched the name. Several profiles appeared, but one photograph stopped her. Vanessa Reed, Maple Grove Community Arts Board. Same honey blonde hair. Same soft smile. Same green eyes from the birthday photo. Claire opened the page. There were pictures from charity auctions, school events, neighborhood cleanups. And then 3 rows down, one image made Claire lean closer. Vanessa stood beside Daniel at a summer fundraiser, both holding paper plates under a blue tent. The caption read, "Thank you to Daniel for always showing up for our little town." Always. The word struck Claire harder than it should have. She searched further. A 4th of July picnic. Daniel in sunglasses, standing behind the teenage boy as fireworks blurred in the distance. A Christmas tree lighting. Daniel lifting Lily so she could place a silver star on a low branch. A fall harvest fair. Daniel carrying 2 cups of cider while Vanessa laughed beside him. In each photo he looked relaxed, present, almost young. Claire touched the screen with one finger, not because she wanted to, but because she needed to know the man in those pictures was real. He wore the brown watch she had given him for their 15th anniversary. The one he claimed he lost in an airport restroom in Atlanta. She remembered how guilty she had felt for being upset. "It is just a watch, Claire," he had said gently. "Do not make it bigger than it is." But it had been bigger. It had been on his wrist in another life. Claire rose from the desk slowly. In the kitchen, Daniel's cake waited under the soft overhead light, perfect and untouched. She walked to the oven, turned it off though nothing was inside, then opened the refrigerator and slid the cake onto the middle shelf. The small act felt final, like closing a chapter no one else knew had ended. Upstairs, she changed out of her apron and into dark jeans, a cream sweater, and the camel-colored coat Daniel once said made her look elegant. She paused before the bedroom mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes too bright, but her hands were steady now. She placed the invitation in her purse, then added her phone, keys, and the old leather wallet with her driver's license tucked behind a faded photo from their honeymoon in Charleston. At the front door, she looked back at the house. The lamps glowed. The flowers on the dining table leaned toward the empty chair Daniel would not fill. For 18 years, Claire had waited inside rooms he kept leaving. This time she stepped outside first. The drive to Maple Grove felt longer than 43 miles. Claire kept both hands on the steering wheel, fingers wrapped so tightly around the leather that her knuckles paled beneath the passing glow of streetlights. Outside, October had settled over the suburbs with its polite little comforts, pumpkins on porches, wreaths on doors, golden leaves skittering across quiet roads. Everything looked soft. Everything looked safe. It was strange how the world could keep looking beautiful while your life quietly split in two. Her phone buzzed twice from inside her purse, but she did not reach for it. She already knew it would not be Daniel telling the truth. Men like Daniel did not confess when the walls began to crack. They painted over the cracks and asked why you were staring. Claire followed the directions past a strip mall, a small Methodist church, a gas station glowing white in the dark, then turned onto Main Street. Maple Grove Bistro sat on the corner beneath warm string lights, with flower boxes under the windows and a chalkboard sign that read, "Private Birthday Party Tonight." She parked across the street beneath a maple tree nearly bare of leaves. For several seconds, she stayed inside the car with the engine running, listening to the soft rush of the heater. Her heart was not racing anymore. That frightened her more than panic would have. She felt clear. Hollow but clear. Through the restaurant windows she could see the private room in the back. Balloons floated near the ceiling, pale pink and silver. A banner stretched across one brick wall. "Happy birthday, Lily." Claire swallowed. There it was. A child's name written in glittering letters, proof that the line on the invitation was not a typo, not a joke, not some misunderstanding she could carry home and let Daniel explain away. She turned off the engine and stepped out into the cold. The air smelled like damp leaves and wood smoke. She crossed the street slowly, stopping just outside the window where a thin layer of condensation blurred the edges of everything inside. She lifted one hand and wiped a small clear circle in the glass with her fingertips. And then she saw him. Daniel. Not the tired husband who came home late and barely looked up from his phone. Not the distracted man who kissed her cheek like an obligation. Not the executive who wore silence like a tailored suit. This Daniel was alive. He stood beside a long table covered with gifts, laughing as he tried to untangle a ribbon from a little girl's hair. Lily. She wore a lavender dress and sparkly sneakers, and she looked up at him like he was the safest person in the world. Daniel bent down, said something Claire could not hear, and Lily giggled so hard she covered her mouth with both hands. Claire felt something inside her chest fold in on itself. A teenage boy stood nearby, tall, awkward, wearing a varsity jacket. Daniel reached over and straightened the boy's collar with a casual tenderness that looked practiced. The boy rolled his eyes, but he smiled anyway. Then Vanessa appeared beside them, holding a stack of paper plates. Daniel placed his hand at the small of her back as he leaned close to say something. It was such a simple gesture. Quiet, familiar, devastating. Claire knew that touch. She knew the weight of it, the ownership hidden in its gentleness, the easy comfort of two people who had stood beside each other many times before. Vanessa looked up at Daniel and laughed, and he laughed with her. Not politely, not carefully, fully. For years, Claire had begged for scraps of that version of him. A weekend without emails. A dinner without checking his watch. One honest conversation without being told she was imagining things. Yet here he was, giving his warmth freely in a room 43 miles from home. A server carried out a birthday cake with candles already placed on top. Everyone gathered around. Daniel moved to the head of the table like he belonged there, like he had always belonged there. Lily tugged on his sleeve, and he lifted the lighter from Vanessa's hand. Claire watched his face soften as he lit each candle, one by one. Like always. The words from the invitation returned with a pain so precise it almost felt clean. Claire stepped back from the window. Her breath clouded in front of her. She pressed one hand over her purse, feeling the stiff edge of the invitation inside. Part of her wanted to leave, to drive home, to put the cake back on the counter, to wait until Daniel returned with another polished lie. But then the people inside began to sing, and through the glass Claire saw Daniel singing too. His eyes fixed on Lily as if this were the only birthday that mattered. That was when Claire understood the truth was not coming to find her. She would have to walk in and meet it herself. Claire reached for the restaurant door, but before her fingers touched the handle, it swung open from the inside. Vanessa stepped out carrying an empty cake box under one arm and a phone pressed between her shoulder and ear. Up close, she looked younger than Claire had expected, maybe late 30s, with soft lines around her eyes and the tired grace of a woman who had spent the day making everything perfect for someone else. She was still smiling when she saw Claire standing there. Then the smile shifted into polite confusion. "I am sorry," Vanessa said, lowering her phone. "Are you here for the party?" Claire looked past her through the open door. Inside, Daniel was helping Lily place candles back into a small paper bag. His sleeves rolled up, his face gentle in a way Claire had almost forgotten he was capable of. The warmth from the restaurant drifted out, carrying the smell of tomato sauce, sugar, coffee, and birthday candles just blown out. Claire turned back to Vanessa. Her voice came out calm, almost too calm. "I think I was invited by mistake." Vanessa blinked, then gave a small apologetic laugh. "Oh no, that sounds like me. I mailed 3 invitations to the wrong streets this week. I am so sorry." She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and glanced toward Claire's purse. "Which family are you with?" Claire felt the question settle between them like a glass placed carefully on a table. Which family? She could have answered in 100 ways. She could have said 18 years. She could have said a house in Westbrook. She could have said a wedding ring, a mortgage, a shared bank account, a cake waiting untouched in the refrigerator. Instead, she reached into her purse and pulled out the cream-colored invitation. Vanessa recognized it immediately. Her expression softened with embarrassment. "Oh my goodness, that one must have gone to the wrong address. It was supposed to go to Daniel's office. He always forgets dates unless I put them in writing. Always." Claire looked down at the card, then back at Vanessa. "How long have you known Daniel Whitmore?" Vanessa's face changed. Not enough for most people to notice, but Claire saw it. A flicker of caution. A tiny tightening around the mouth. "About 12 years," Vanessa said slowly. "Why?" Claire nodded once. as if confirming a number she had already felt forming in the dark. And Lily? Vanessa's eyes moved toward the window, where the little girl was laughing beside Daniel. She is 9. My daughter. Claire inhaled quietly. 9. There were winters Claire had spent alone while Daniel said he was stuck in Denver. There were anniversaries he had missed. There were hotel charges, canceled dinners, silent Sundays, all suddenly rearranging themselves into a shape she could no longer deny. Vanessa hugged the cake box closer to her chest. I'm sorry, who are you? Claire looked at the woman in front of her, and for one strange second she did not hate her. Vanessa was not smirking. She was not cruel. She looked like a woman standing at the edge of something she had not yet seen. Claire lifted her left hand. The diamond on her ring finger caught the restaurant light. My name is Claire Whitmore, she said. I am Daniel's wife. The words landed softly, but Vanessa reacted as if the ground had dropped beneath her. Her face drained of color. The cake box slipped slightly from her arm before she caught it against her hip. No, she whispered. That is not possible. Claire said nothing. Vanessa shook her head once, then again harder, as if she could shake the sentence out of the air. Daniel is not married. He told me he was widowed. Claire went very still. For a moment, the noise from the party faded until all she could hear was the faint hum of the restaurant sign above them. Widowed. The word was so clean, so final, so obscene in its neatness. He had not merely hidden Claire. He had buried her in a story so another woman could love him without guilt. Vanessa's eyes filled, but she did not cry. She looked through the window at Daniel, who was now carrying Lily on one hip while guests clapped for a group photo. My son calls him Dad, Vanessa said, barely audible. My daughter thinks he comes home late because his work is important. Claire felt the invitation bend in her hand again. For the first time that night, her anger found something colder than grief. Not rage. Clarity. She stepped closer to Vanessa, lowering her voice so no one inside could hear. I came here thinking you were the truth he chose over me. Vanessa looked back at her, trembling. Claire glanced at Daniel through the glass. But I think we are both standing outside the same lie. Vanessa did not go back inside right away. She stood beside Claire under the restaurant awning, holding the empty cake box like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Through the window, Daniel laughed with the guests, lifted a paper cup and a toast, and accepted every smile in the room as if he had earned it honestly. Claire watched Vanessa watching him, and the strangest feeling moved through her. Not pity exactly. Not forgiveness. Recognition. There was a particular silence women carried when they had been trained to doubt themselves. Claire knew that silence. She had lived inside it for years. Vanessa finally whispered, He told me you were gone before we met. Claire closed her eyes for half a second. Gone. It sounded gentler than dead, but it meant the same thing. He said it was too painful to talk about, Vanessa continued. He said he lost his wife suddenly, and that he was trying to rebuild his life. I thought I was helping him heal. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she held herself together. Claire looked down at the invitation still in her hand. Daniel had taken her existence and turned it into a tragedy he could use. He had made her a ghost so he could become a wounded man in another woman's arms, a devoted father at another dinner table, a hero in a story he had written himself. Come with me, Claire said. Not inside. Not yet. Vanessa hesitated, then nodded. They crossed the street together and sat in Claire's car beneath the nearly bare maple tree. For a moment neither woman spoke. The heater blew softly. The restaurant lights glowed through the windshield. It felt absurdly normal, two women sitting in a parked car after a birthday party. Except the birthday party had just torn open both of their lives. Claire unlocked her phone first. Her hands were steady now in a way that did not feel like calm. It felt like a courtroom inside her chest. She opened her calendar and scrolled back through years of notes, appointments, canceled dinners, reminders she had once made to keep their marriage from disappearing completely. Vanessa opened her photo album with trembling fingers. The first date they matched was 3 years earlier, April 17th. Claire had written, Daniel in Seattle Investor Conference. Vanessa had a photo from that same night. Daniel at a school music program, standing beside Lily with a bouquet of daisies. Claire stared at the image until the colors seemed too bright. That was the night I had the flu, she said quietly. I asked him to come home early. He said the flight was delayed. Vanessa pressed her hand to her mouth. They kept going. August 9th. Claire's father's memorial dinner in Westbrook. Daniel said he could not attend because of a crisis with a client in Houston. Vanessa had a picture of Daniel at a lake house, helping the teenage boy Ethan tie a fishing line. The caption read, "Dad finally took a weekend off." Vanessa's breathing became shallow. He told me that weekend was special because he never took time for himself. Claire felt something inside her harden, not against Vanessa, but against the years Daniel had stolen from both sides. November 22nd. Claire's anniversary dinner canceled at the last minute. Vanessa's photo showed Daniel helping Lily blow out Thanksgiving candles at a school event. February 14th. Claire had eaten takeout alone in the living room after Daniel claimed a snowstorm trapped him downtown. Vanessa had a receipt from a small inn outside Maple Grove. Dinner for two, paid with a card ending in the same 4 digits as one of Daniel's business accounts. Then Claire saw it. In one photo from a summer picnic, Daniel's wrist was turned toward the camera. The brown leather watch. Her anniversary gift. The one he had said was lost. Claire zoomed in and handed the phone to Vanessa. "I gave him that watch," she said. Vanessa looked at it, then closed her eyes. "He told me Ethan picked it out for him for Father's Day." The heater hummed between them. Outside, a family walked past carrying balloons, laughing softly, unaware that inside the parked car, 2 women were rebuilding reality from scraps. Vanessa opened a private folder next. Bank transfers. Travel confirmations. A lease agreement for a townhouse in Maple Grove with Daniel's signature listed as guarantor. Claire felt the last fragile thread of denial snap. This was not an affair. This was architecture. Daniel had built a second life with receipts, schedules, gifts, school events, birthday candles, and lies placed so carefully they looked like love. Vanessa wiped one tear from her cheek, almost angrily. "What do we do?" Claire looked through the windshield at the restaurant. Daniel was visible again, standing near the cake table, smiling for another photo. For the first time all night, Claire did not feel like a wife being left outside. She felt like a witness. "We do not beg him for the truth," she said softly. "We already have it." Claire and Vanessa sat in the car until the birthday song faded into ordinary conversation, and the guests began drifting toward the front of the restaurant with coats over their arms and gift bags in their hands. Neither woman had spoken for several minutes. There was nothing left to prove between them. The proof sat in their phones, in their calendars, in the small details Daniel had misplaced because he believed no one would ever compare notes. Claire looked at the cream-colored invitation resting on her lap. The gold balloon sticker still shone under the dashboard light, cheerful and ridiculous, as if it had not just opened the floor beneath 2 families. Vanessa wiped her palms down the sides of her dress and took a breath that shook only at the end. "Lily will wonder where I went," she said. "Ethan too." Claire nodded. Her own mind had already moved ahead, not because she was ready, but because pain sometimes creates a strange kind of focus. "We do not do this in front of them," she said. Vanessa looked at her, and relief flashed through the grief in her eyes. "Thank you." Claire meant it. Whatever Daniel had done, the children inside that restaurant had not written the lie. They had only lived inside the house he built with it. A few more guests left. Through the window, Daniel stood near the back room, holding Lily's coat while she slipped her arms into the sleeves. He looked like a patient father. A good man. A safe man. Claire felt the old instinct rise in her, the one that wanted to protect the image of him because she had protected it for so long. Then she remembered the message on her phone. "Might stay at the Westbrook Hotel downtown. Do not worry." She almost smiled. He was still lying while standing beneath birthday balloons. Vanessa touched Claire's sleeve lightly. "There is a side exit near the hallway," she said. "We can ask him to step outside after the kids leave with my sister." Claire looked at her. "Your sister knows him?" Vanessa gave a small broken laugh. "Everyone here knows him. Daniel Reed, the man who never misses a birthday." Claire absorbed the false name slowly. Reed. He had not simply entered Vanessa's life. He had changed his edges to fit it. The man she knew as Daniel Whitmore had become Daniel Reed in another town, with another mailbox, another set of neighbors, another story so complete it made Claire's marriage feel like a document filed in the wrong drawer. They waited until Vanessa's sister, Marcy, arrived with a minivan in cheerful confusion, gathering Lily, Ethan, leftover cake, and a cluster of presents. Vanessa's face softened when she hugged her daughter, and Claire looked away, giving them privacy. She heard Lily say, "Where is Dad?" Vanessa answered with a steadiness that cost her something. "He has to talk with me for a minute, sweetheart. I will be home soon." When the minivan pulled away, Daniel was still inside, checking his phone near the empty cake table. Claire and Vanessa crossed the street together. The cold air moved through the trees, dry leaves scraping along the curb like whispers. Vanessa opened the restaurant door first. The room smelled of extinguished candles and coffee. Staff members cleared plates. A few balloons bobbed lazily above the chairs. Daniel looked up, and for 1 second his expression was simply surprised. Then he saw Claire behind Vanessa. Everything in his face stopped moving. Claire had imagined this moment many times during the drive. She had imagined anger, denial, maybe even an apology. What she had not expected was the silence. Daniel stared at her as if she were the one who had walked into the wrong life. Vanessa spoke first. "Daniel, we need to talk outside." His eyes flicked from Vanessa to Claire, then to the servers nearby. "Not here," he said quietly, already managing the room, already calculating who might hear. Claire stepped forward and placed the invitation on the birthday table beside a smear of frosting and a half-burned candle. Her voice was low, but it carried. "You are right," she said. "Not here. Not in front of anyone who still believes you." Daniel's jaw tightened. "Claire, I can explain." She looked at him, then really looked at him, at the man who had taught her to apologize for noticing the truth. "No," she said. "Tonight you can listen." Vanessa stood beside her, pale but upright. Daniel glanced toward the door, toward the empty chairs, toward the remains of the party he had almost survived. For the first time since Claire had known him, he had no prepared sentence ready. The birthday balloon swayed above them, pink and silver and innocent, while the lie that had filled the room for years finally had nowhere left to sit. Daniel followed them outside through the side door behind the restaurant, where the alley smelled faintly of rain, cardboard boxes, and cooling bread from the bakery next door. A single yellow light buzzed above them. It made everything look plain. Not dramatic. Not cinematic. Just 3 adults standing in the cold with nowhere left to hide. Daniel buttoned his jacket as if he were walking into a business meeting, and Claire saw the mask slide back over his face. "Careful. Controlled. Reasonable." "Claire," he said, keeping his voice low, "I know how this looks." Vanessa made a sound that was almost a laugh. "How this looks?" Daniel turned toward her, softening his eyes in the way Claire knew too well. "Vanessa, please. Let me explain before this becomes something it does not have to be." Claire felt the old pull of that voice. The voice that made chaos sound like her fault. The voice that once convinced her a lipstick stain was from a client's wife hugging him at a conference, that a missed anniversary was unavoidable, that loneliness was something she needed to manage more gracefully. But tonight the voice had lost its magic. Vanessa opened her phone and held it up. 12 years, Daniel. 12 years of school events, birthdays, hospital forms, mortgage papers, emergency contacts. "You signed my daughter's permission slips," as Daniel read. Daniel's mouth tightened. "I was trying to protect everyone." Claire looked at him with quiet disbelief. "Protect?" He glanced toward her. "You do not understand what my life was like back then. I was trapped. I made mistakes. I tried to keep things separate so no one would get hurt. No one would get hurt." Claire repeated the words slowly, not because she did not understand them, but because she wanted to hear how absurd they sounded in the open air. She reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. On the screen was his message from less than 2 hours earlier. "Might stay at the Westbrook Hotel downtown. Do not worry." She turned it toward him. "You sent this while lighting candles for your daughter." Daniel looked away. Vanessa looked at the message, and something in her face closed. He was not trapped, Claire realized. He was organized. That was what hurt most. This had not been one reckless choice that spun out of control. This was planning. This was calendars and aliases and bank accounts and carefully selected weekends. This was a man dividing women into time slots and calling it protection. Daniel reached for Claire's arm, but she stepped back before he touched her. "Do not," she said. The word came out soft, but it stopped him. For the first time he looked genuinely frightened. Not heartbroken. Not sorry. Frightened of consequences, Vanessa began listing dates, her voice shaking but clear. April 17th, the school music program. August 9th, the lake house. Thanksgiving week, the inn outside Maple Grove. Every date matched a lie Claire had once swallowed, with dinner growing cold on the table. Daniel's face changed with each one. Not because he was hearing the truth, but because he was realizing the truth had been documented. Claire opened the folder Vanessa had sent her minutes earlier while they were in the car. Transfers from Daniel's business account to a Maple Grove lease. Hotel charges. Insurance forms. A savings account Claire had never seen. Funded during the same months, he told her they needed to cut expenses at home. Her voice remained steady. This is not only betrayal, Daniel. This is financial deception. Our attorney will receive everything tonight. Daniel's eyes snapped to hers. Our attorney? Claire nodded. Mine now. The alley went quiet except for the distant clink of dishes inside the restaurant. Daniel tried one more time, but the performance had thinned. Claire, think about everything we built. She looked at him then, and in her mind she saw the chocolate cake waiting in the refrigerator, the empty chair at the dining table, the wedding photo on the console, the watch on his wrist, and another woman's picnic picture. We did not build this, she said. I decorated it while you built somewhere else. Vanessa wiped her cheek, then stood straighter. You told me she was dead. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, and that tiny gesture was the only confession either woman needed. Claire felt the final door inside her shut, not with anger but with relief. She had come to Maple Grove searching for proof that her marriage was broken. Instead, she found proof that her instincts had been alive the whole time. Daniel looked between them, waiting for one of them to soften, to bargain, to ask why. Neither did. Claire picked up the cream invitation from where she had tucked it under her arm and held it between two fingers. This went to the wrong house, she said. Then she placed it against his chest and let go. But for once, the truth arrived exactly where it belonged. By the time Claire returned to Westbrook, the house no longer felt like home. It was still beautiful in the quiet way Daniel had always preferred: gray shutters, trimmed hedges, polished floors, rooms arranged to impress guests who never stayed long enough to feel the emptiness. The chocolate cake waited in the refrigerator exactly where she had left it. For a moment, Claire stood in the open light of the kitchen and looked at it. Then she took it out, set it on the counter, and removed the plastic cover. The frosting was smooth. The candles were unused. Everything about it belonged to a version of her that had kept loving by habit because stopping felt too frightening. She carried the cake to the small round table by the window, lit one candle, and sat down alone. Not to celebrate Daniel. Not anymore. She watched the little flame tremble in the dark glass of the window and whispered, "Happy birthday," to the woman who finally came home. The next morning, Claire called an attorney before she called Daniel. By noon, she had opened a separate bank account. By Monday, she had copied documents, secured records, and removed her name from the performances she had mistaken for partnership. Daniel called constantly at first. He left careful messages, wounded messages, angry messages disguised as concern. Claire listened to none of them twice. Vanessa sent one text that evening. "The children are safe with my sister. I told them enough for now. Thank you for not making them carry what he did." Claire read it at the dining table, surrounded by folders, and placed one hand over her heart. She had expected to hate Vanessa. Instead, she felt tied to her by a strange, painful thread of truth. In the months that followed, Daniel's polished life came apart the way all false things do. Not all at once, but piece by piece under honest light. The secret accounts were reviewed. The false name was documented. The quiet financial transfers were traced. Claire did not need to shout. Paper spoke clearly enough. In court, Daniel looked smaller than she remembered. Not poor, not powerless, just ordinary without the admiration he had collected from women who trusted him. When the settlement was finalized, Claire sold the Westbrook house. People told her she was brave. She did not feel brave. She felt tired, then lighter, then slowly real. She moved into a sunlit apartment 12 miles away, close to a bookstore, a walking trail, and a bakery that made cinnamon rolls every Saturday morning. She bought dishes Daniel would have called too colorful. She hung no wedding photos. On the windowsill, she planted lavender in 3 white pots and learned that silence could be peaceful when it was not waiting for a lie to come home. 1 year later, on a cool October evening, Claire baked a chocolate cake again. This time she added walnuts because she liked them. She laughed when she did it, a small surprised laugh that filled the kitchen like music returning to a room. Just before sunset, the mail arrived. Among the bills and catalogs was a cream-colored envelope. For a second, her body remembered before her mind did. Her fingers paused. Her breath caught. Then she saw the handwriting. Vanessa. Inside was a simple card with pressed lavender taped to the corner. Claire, it read, I wanted you to know that Lily is doing well, Ethan is talking more, and we are learning what truth feels like in this house. You did not destroy our family. You helped us stop living inside someone else's lie. Thank you for walking in that night. Claire sat by the window for a long time with the card in her lap. Then she opened the small wooden box where she had kept the first invitation, the one with the gold balloon sticker and the photograph on the back. It no longer felt like a blade. Felt like a door. She placed Vanessa's card beside it, 2 pieces of paper that told the whole story. One had broken her heart open. The other proved something had grown there afterward. Claire lit a candle on her own cake, closed her eyes, and made a wish without asking for Daniel, answers, or the past to change. She wished only for a life where love never required her to disappear. Then she blew out the candle, cut herself the first slice, and smiled when she tasted the walnuts. Sometimes freedom does not arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrives as a birthday card, a quiet apartment, a cake made exactly the way you like it, and the sudden understanding that the home you were trying to save was never as precious as the woman you almost lost inside it.